Few writers have the gift of expressing truth as well as one pastor, the missionary-hearted teaching pastor at Bethlehem Baptist Church of Minneapolis, John Piper. Let me just read to you, and I was going to bring it, but I left it somewhere talking to someone. I was going to read to you the flyleaf of one of his books he wrote 4 years ago. I'll just read an excerpt. And I believe that everyone, when they get anywhere near the age of 50, should read the little paperback book that's titled, Don't Waste Your Life. This is his flyleaf statement. It has 3 points. First, a tragedy in the making. This is what Piper says. You may not be sure what you want your life to do or to make a difference. Maybe you don't care much about whether you make a lasting difference or serve something great. You maybe just want people to like you, and if people just like being around you, you'd be satisfied. Or you could have a good job and a good wife or a husband and a couple of kids and a nice car and long weekends and a few good friends. And then have a fun retirement and a quick and easy death and no hell. If you could have all that even without God, you'd be satisfied. And then he says this, that's a tragedy in the making, a wasted life. And then he goes on to say, these lives and deaths were not a tragedy. In April of 2000, Ruby Eliason and Laura Edwards were killed in Cameroon, West Africa. Ruby was over 80. She was single all her life. She poured out her life for one great thing, to make Jesus Christ known among the unreached, poor, and the sick. Laura, her partner, was a widow, a medical doctor, pushing 80 years old and serving at Ruby's side in Cameroon. The brakes failed in April. The car went over a cliff, and they were both killed instantly. And then Piper says, I asked my congregation, was that a tragedy? 2 lives driven by one great passion, namely to be spent in unheralded service to the perishing poor for the glory of Jesus Christ? Even 2 decades after most of their American counterparts had retired and thrown their lives away on trifles? No, that's not a tragedy. That's a glory. These lives were not wasted, and these lives were not lost. For Jesus said, whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel will save it. Mark 8:35. And now his final point. An American tragedy. How not to finish your one life. I will tell you what a tragedy is, Piper says. I will show you how to waste your life. Consider this story from the February 1998 edition of Reader's Digest, which tells about a couple who took early retirement from their jobs in the Northeast 5 years ago. He was 59, she was 51. Now they live in Punta Gorda, Florida, where they cruise on their 30-foot trawler, play softball, and collect shells. Piper says, at first when I read it, I thought it might be a joke, a spoof on the American dream, but it wasn't. Tragically, this was the dream. Come to the end of your life, your one and only precious God-given life, and let the last great work of your life before you give an account to your Creator be this: playing softball and collecting shells. Picture them as they stand before the great day of judgment and judge. Looking up, say, look, Lord, see my shells. That is a tragedy. And people today are spending billions of dollars to persuade you to embrace that tragic dream. Over against that, I put my protest. Don't buy it. Don't waste your life. And then he gives the theme of his book. God created us to live with a single passion, to joyfully display his supreme excellence in all the spheres of life. The wasted life is a life without this passion for Christ. God calls us to pray and think and dream and plan and work not to be made much of, but to make much of Christ in every part of our lives. Great reading. If you're going to a 50th birthday party, spend $7.95 and buy them one of those with the black stuff that you give people on their 50th birthday. But what our dear gifted brother Piper is passionately asking is whether or not we're going to see Jesus Christ clearer and clearer the older we get. Which should make each of us ask tonight, how clearly do I see him right now? Maybe the reason the American church is buying into the American dream, much like the Israelites began following the religion of the Canaanites, is because we don't see our God very clearly.